naivete, but nobody would come if I said that was the topic. So
hand it over to Brian.
Somebody give me the high sign. Is it?
Who's got the? Where's Julian?
I'm here.
So, tell him to go.
When you go, I'll. So when you're ready.
You start.
So this is a story about why you should not listen to people like me, and more to the point, how you should not listen to people like me. So the story takes place roughly 10 years ago on the pages of the C2 Wiki, which is where a lot of the early work on test-driven design was kind of thrashed out. And at the time, I was a testing consultant, and in the early part of the 90s, which was the last big wave of programmer testing, I had attempted to teach programmers to do unit testing. Now, I had not done it the way that we do it nowadays, but I had taught them, and I had tried very hard, and I had had very little success. And I also knew that most other people had had very little success, and the reason was that the test suites were difficult to maintain, and as a consequence, programmers were always faced with the choice of, do I maintain this test suite that I didn't want to write in the first place because it's broken due to all these code changes, or do I comment out the broken tests and write new code? And they always ended up, sooner or later, writing new code. So when the XP people started talking about test-driven development and how much they liked it, I came onto the wiki and said, especially to Ron Jeffries, who was major proponent, oh, it's very good, boy, that you are so ambitious, but I am coming here from the height of experience and expertise to tell you that what you're trying to do is doomed to failure. In 2 years, you will have forgotten all about this testing stuff. Trust me, I'm an expert. And the good thing is, they did not listen to me. Well, they listened to me to the point of arguing with me, but they didn't listen to me to the point of actually doing anything other than arguing. What they went on to do was to invent test-driven design as we know it today. And the thing that I think is important about that is I was coming from a background where I said to the programmers I taught, all of this stuff I'm going to teach you would work better if you wrote the tests first, but you won't do that, so we'll talk about writing the tests last. And so I was working in an environment, I was assuming a context in which there were certain immutable, unchangeable facts, such as programmers don't like testing and programmers can't be made to like testing, and that there is a certain inherent unmaintainability to unit tests, etc., etc., etc. These people, instead of accepting those facts, letting the context drive their actions, they decided to change the context. So programmers don't like writing tests, so you make it a real rapid, write a test, then you get to write some code, write a test, then you get to write some code, so you don't have this long slog of writing tests. Another thing that they did was they made you write the tests first, because if you write the code first, it's easy to put off writing the test, but if you write the test first, you're hardly going to not do the code because you don't have time. And one of the most significant things that happened, the reason why we call it test-driven design, is that people were willing to change the design of their code in order to make the tests fast because they valued the kind of pacing and confidence that the test gave you. So they changed the code of their design in favor of testing, which I never in my wildest dreams believed was possible. And coincidentally enough, doing that led to designs that were like they were always supposed to be in the first place. You know, highly cohesive modules, loose coupling, all that stuff nobody did when it was just a good thing to do, but once it became something that got in the way of their testing, they changed everything to make that happen. And that's a characteristic I've seen of Agile teams, which is when there's something interfering with their work, instead of accepting it, they change it. And they are generally too naive to accept the fact that some things are impossible. And by changing the impossible and not listening to people like me, they managed to achieve things that no expert would have believed they achieved. And so that's an attitude, that's one of the values I try to preach to Agile teams. They should be naive in the face of expertise. Thank you.